In August 1914, the streets of Britain were alive with excitement. Young men lined up outside recruitment offices, laughing, shaking hands, clapping each other on the back. They had been told the war would be over by Christmas. Generals spoke of swift victories. Politicians spoke of glory. Mothers waved handkerchiefs at train stations as their sons departed, proud, not yet afraid. Nobody, not the soldiers, not the commanders, not the governments, truly understood what they were walking into. To fill its armies, Britain launched the most ambitious volunteer recruitment drive in history. Lord Kitchener, war minister and national hero, looked out from posters on every wall. His finger pointed directly at you. His message was simple. Your country needs you. And they came, by the hundreds of thousands. To encourage enlistment, the War Office made a promise. Men could serve alongside their friends, their neighbors, their brothers. These became known as the PALS battalions. Sheffield, Manchester, Bradford. Entire communities signing up together. It was a powerful idea for recruitment. It would prove to be a devastating one for the towns they left behind. The Western Front was unlike anything human beings had ever built. 440 miles of trenches, stretching from the English Channel to the Swiss border. Men lived in them, slept in them, died in them. The mud was permanent. The cold was permanent. The sound of distant artillery, permanent. They were separated from the German lines by a strip of devastated ground called No Man's Land. Sometimes 50 meters wide, sometimes a few hundred. Crossing it by 1916 was understood to be nearly suicidal. And yet, an order was coming. By 1916, the French army was being shattered at the Battle of Verdun. France was losing men faster than it could replace them. In desperation, the French commander sent a message to the British. Attack somewhere, anywhere, relieve the pressure. British Field Marshal Sir Douglas Haig chose the Somme, not for strategic brilliance, but because it
was simply where the two Allied lines happened to meet. In a comfortable headquarters far behind the front, officers leaned over maps and drew lines and arrows. Clean lines, confident arrows. The men who would follow those lines had no idea what the map didn't show. The plan rested on one central assumption. Artillery would destroy the German defenses before a single soldier went over the top. For 7 days, from June 24th to July 1st, the British fired 1.6 million shells along a 21-mile front. 1.6 million. The noise could be heard across the English Channel, in southern England, 60 miles away. Commanders were so confident that infantry were told they could walk, not run, across no man's land. The enemy would already be destroyed. There was just one problem. Up to 1/3 of those shells were dots. They never exploded. And the German soldiers were sheltering 30 feet underground. 30 feet below the surface of no man's land, German soldiers sat in the dark and listened. The earth above them shook with every impact. Dust fell from the ceiling. Candles flickered. But they were alive. Their deep bunkers, carved into the chalk beneath the French farmland, had held. Their machine guns were beside them. Their ammunition was stacked and ready. All they had to do was wait for the British guns to stop and then climb back up. At 7:28 a.m. on July 1st, 1916, the British detonated 17 massive mines that had been secretly tunneled beneath German positions over months of painstaking work. One of them, the Lochnagar mine near La Boisselle, blew a crater 300 feet wide and 70 feet deep. The explosion was heard in London. For 2 minutes, the earth itself seemed to be tearing apart.
5:30 a.m. Whistles blew along the British line. 100,000 men began to climb. Up the ladders, over the sandbags, out of the only protection they had. Many of them had never been in combat before. They were bricklayers, shop assistants, farmers, traveling salesmen. They were someone's son, someone's brother, someone's best friend. And they walked into the open, toward the German lines, just as the German machine gunners climbed back up from underground. They walked in long, straight lines,
shoulder to shoulder, across ground torn apart by weeks of shelling, craters filled with dark water, tangles of barbed wire that the bombardment had failed to cut, the debris of a landscape destroyed beyond recognition. They walked because they had been told to, because their officers had told them resistance would be minimal, because they trusted the plan. In the distance, across that open ground, the German machine guns were already waiting. A single German MG-08 machine gun could fire 400 rounds per minute. The Germans had scores of them. And the British lines, walking slowly in formation across open ground, were exactly the kind of target these weapons had been designed to destroy. Men fell in rows. Entire waves cut down before they had crossed half the distance to the German trenches. Battalions that had taken years to build, destroyed in minutes.
The 1st Newfoundland Regiment went over the top with 790 men. 710 were killed or wounded in less than 30 minutes. The 10th West Yorkshire Battalion sent 800 men forward. More than 700 became casualties. Military historians estimate that the majority of the day's casualties occurred in the first 30 minutes. In those first terrible moments when the machine gunners had clear lines of fire and the infantry had nowhere to go. The men of the PALS battalions, the friends who had enlisted together, trained together, sailed to France together, fell together. In Bradford, 2 entire battalions, 2,000 men from the same neighborhoods, advanced near the village of Say. They were cut down almost immediately. Back in Bradford, in the days that followed, local newspapers filled entire pages with columns of names. Men from the same streets, listed side by side in death, just as they had stood side by side in the trenches. When darkness fell on July 1st, 1916, the counting began. British casualties for the day, 57,470. Of those, 19,240 killed. More casualties in a single day than Britain had suffered in the entire Crimea War and the entire Boer War combined. And the territorial gain, the ground actually taken from the Germans at that staggering cost, in most sectors, was nothing. The battle had barely begun.
The Battle of the Somme did not end on July 1st. It raged for another 4.5 months, a grinding attritional campaign fought over mud and ruins all the way to November 18th. And in September of that year, something new appeared on the battlefield. For the first time in the history of warfare, tanks, lumbering armored machines rolling across the cratered ground, crushing wire beneath their tracks. The future of warfare had arrived. Too late and too few to change what had already happened. Behind every number, there was a person. Private Walter Piat of the Manchester Pals wrote to his siblings after being wounded on the first day. He began, "We went up to the trenches on Friday night, June 30th. A letter written by a man who had just survived something he could not find words for, addressed to people who could not imagine what that trench looked like at 7:30 in the morning. Across Britain, in the weeks that followed, entire communities went into mourning simultaneously. Some towns lost so many young men in a single morning, they never fully recovered. More than a century later, in the rolling green fields of northern France, the Thiepval Memorial stands. A massive arch of red brick and stone rising from the ground where the battle was fought. Carved into its surfaces, the names of the missing. British and South African soldiers killed on the Somme, whose bodies were never found, who simply disappeared into the mud. 72,195 names, each one a person who woke up on the morning of July 1st, 1916,
who climbed out of a trench and walked forward. The Battle of the Somme does not ask us to find heroes or villains. It asks us only to remember.